Story 1. I do it sometimes just so it takes longer. I can absolutely crush a slice eating by hand. Using a fork and knife forces me to enjoy it more and spend more time socializing at the table. Story 2. I do it sometimes when the dough is super thin and soggy and will break the second you pick it up. Many of our pizzas are like that in Italy, and it's normal to use a fork and knife. Story 3. They give you a knife and fork for a reason. I assume most are like me and eat maybe half a slice to a slice with them for their own amusement and to feel all fancy until they get frustrated with how slow it is and go back to using their hands. Story 4. I've eaten pizza with a fork and knife one time in my life. It was the messiest pizza I've ever had, toppings falling all over the place and just a greasy mess. I said, "Forget this," and just ate it like a weird salad. It was pretty good, though. It was still pizza. Story 5. In a restaurant, when presented with a whole, round, unsliced pizza and a knife and fork, I eat it with a knife and fork like most people around here. At home, at some stand-up event or elsewhere, when faced with a sliced takeout pizza in a box, I eat it with my hands like most people around here. Story 6. I eat pizza that way. I feel no guilt or shame. After having taken Italian exchange students to a sushi buffet place and seeing them eat sushi with a knife and fork, cutting it up, I am cutting myself even a bit more slack. Story 7. I do it just to slow myself down. Otherwise, I just inhale slice after slice without taking the time to actually enjoy it. I grew up poor in a family of 6. It was survival of the fittest. I've yet to shake that mentality of there won't be enough. Story 8. I do it in a sit-down Italian restaurant where they make them really thin. There is no other way of picking up the slice without it all falling down and everything sliding off. Story 9. Don't be a cunt and mind your business, lol. But if you must know, most who eat this way have activities involving finger dexterity. Basketball players and gamers are some examples I know of. Story 10. With real pizza, fresh from the oven, this is the way. If it is real pizza, it is very, very thick, so a fork and knife makes sense. Yes, I live in Chicago. Story 11. I don't know if I am really fussed, but I do feel a little uneasy about people that say knife and fork instead of the normal way, fork and knife. Story 12. Depends on the type of pizza. If you try to eat a New York pizza with a fork and knife, I would probably try to show you that it's more efficient to eat with your hands. If you are eating a deep dish pizza or that pot pizza from Chicago, I would think to use a knife and fork. If you're talking about Domino's or Pizza Hut, they probably don't want to get their hands messy. Koreans use gloves when they eat pizza or chicken. Story 13. I do from time to time, depending on how sloppy, for want of a better word, the pizza is. I have a beard. I don't want to have to wash my entire face after eating something. Story 14. Not judging. I prefer eating it the New York way with my hands and folded. But sometimes I do eat with a fork and knife because either there's too much topping or I'm avoiding getting my clothes dirty. Story 15. I do not care. Honestly, I do it as well most of the time. I do not want to burn my fingers on a pizza, and I do not want to make a mess, and I do not want sauce and grease on my fingers. If there is a lot on the pizza, it is just easier to use a knife and fork. Story 16. 2 things. They are fancy or they don't like getting grease on them for one reason or another, neither of which is a good reason to judge them harshly. I might ask because it's not the norm, but it's not so out of the ordinary to be particularly noteworthy. Story 17. Always ate it with my hands because they always sliced the pizza beforehand. First day in Milan and the first pizza I ordered from a local cafe under my Airbnb, they handed me a knife and fork to eat the pizza. So I guess it doesn't matter. Story 18. It depends on the pizza. A nice thin slice or a slab of deep dish are 2 different things. Usually hands, sometimes knife and fork. But really, who cares? Story 19. It gets weirder. Ever seen someone who eats pizza with a fork and knife get mad because the restaurant cut the pizza into rectangles before serving it at the table? I did. It was wild. Story 20. I respect and applaud them for making civilized and practical choices in life. What kind of animal would eat a floppy, greasy slice of pizza with their hands? Unless given no other choice, of course, then anything goes. Haha. Story 21. Depends on the environment. If it's a fancy place, then maybe I'll use them. Maybe if there is other food where I don't want to have oil on my hands, or maybe if the pizza slice is thick or too big. But most of the time, I use my hands. Story 22. It all depends on the culture they are raised in. Some people eat with knives and forks and some do not, and it just depends on where you are raised. I do not pass judgment. Story 23. My mum eats a burger with a knife, spoon, and fork if it's too tall. I understand the reasons. Some of it is that it won't be messy, and you'll have nice, clean hands from all that sticky sauce. So yeah. Story 24. I myself am one of those people sometimes. It depends on how easy it is to actually pick up the slice without losing all the toppings. There's nothing wrong with some help from a knife and fork to make manageable mini slices or, if really loaded, just to eat from the fork. I like to add wall-to-wall sliced olives. And yes, I eat spaghetti with a fork. I was taught to twirl it, but that is just way too big for my mouth even as an adult. I like much smaller bites. I'm all for food freedom. Eat however you want, regardless of the food absolutists. Just try not to choke and remember to actually chew before swallowing. I can't do the Heimlich maneuver very well on a bigger person, especially. Human digestion of carbohydrates, in particular, begins in the mouth. Really, the proper enzymes are in our saliva. We are not cats. Story 25. I've never cared until once I was eating pizza with a friend, and they used a knife and fork. I didn't care. Then they gave a disgusted look and said, "You? Why are you using your hands?" I think about this moment a lot when eating pizza barehanded. I still don't care, but wow. Story 26. If the pizza is hot or messy, it's the best option. Other cultures eat it with a fork and knife, and I often do too. It's more civilized. Americans are just gross. Story 27. I'm American. I went to Ireland a few years ago and had dinner at a pizza shop. Everyone was on dates, treating it like a special event, and they were using forks and knives. I knew that I should, but I just ate with my hands. I don't mind other people doing their own thing, but I'm going to do mine. It was weird. They looked at me like I was crazy. It got awkward. I'm going to avoid eating pizza in Europe now. Story 28. If they do it regularly, I think they are a bit extra, not gonna lie. If the pizza has either a floppy crust, is deep dish, or is otherwise messy to pick up and eat, then it is somewhat acceptable. Story 29. I don't really feel super negative or anything, but I do feel the person likely has difficulty with being relatable to the people around them. Not always the case, of course. A big part of socializing, whether someone realizes it or not, has to do with blending in to some degree. If everyone is eating pizza with their hands, it's kind of an unconscious signal to others that we are all hanging out, chilling, and having a good time. If one person starts using a knife and fork, others will notice, and even though they may not realize it, their subconscious at least is going to ask the question, is this person judging me for using my hands? Is this person looking down on me for using my hands? And this causes slight unease. Of course, this is at a very minute level, but it is probably happening to a minute degree. Of course, how other people feel is often, but not for everything in every situation, on them and not you. Story 30. I once took a date to a pizza place, and she picked the slice up with her hands. I looked at her and pointed to the cutlery, saying, "There's a knife and fork there." She then proceeded to join me eating with a knife and fork. She also still slept with me. It makes me chuckle to this day. I wasn't being particularly serious. I prefer using them as I'm not a fan of having greasy fingers, so I was only being a bit of a jerk. Story 31. Pizzeria employee here. Knives and forks do get used a lot, including by me, mostly because it's a lot more hygienic. Napkins don't clean your hands, and you're still cross-contaminating everything you touch with allergens like gluten. No, I'm not told to do this. I'm just not a slob and have table manners in public. I also don't care about being judged or shamed by society for not adhering to the standards they're told to follow by someone who sits in front of a phone all day. Also, to clarify, if you eat your pizza with your hands, I have no issues with that. I have my way, you have yours. Story 32. I don't care as long as they actually eat the pizza they take rather than butcher a piece to get what they want and then take another piece and another. If you are a guest at my home and ruin an entire pizza so that no one else wants to eat what you cut away and didn't eat, I am going to expect you to contribute significantly for another whole pizza. Story 33. I don't trust them. They know the norm has evolved. They know it's a hand food now. Early humans used to eat steak with their hands. Now we use a knife and fork. Times have changed. Get over it. Get those palms greasy. Story 34. In Brazil, it is common and considered correct to eat pizza with a fork and knife. So when we see someone eating pizza, we just think, man, I want one too. Story 35. I have strong feelings that people who eat pizza or even candy bars with a knife and fork are completely validated in thinking people who care are totally insane. Absolutely. Story 36. Listen, if you're eating a super loaded Chicago deep dish, I get it. But if you're using utensils on a regular New York slice, we need to have a serious talk. Story 37. I remember when I went to India in 2009. I went to Pizza Hut with him. It was all the rage back then. When the pizza arrived, he was eating it with a knife and fork while I was eating by slice. I was surprised and asked, "What are you doing? It's already sliced." He couldn't believe it and said, "That's how everyone eats here." I too couldn't believe him. Story 38. I'm Indian, and foreign people and my cousins who live abroad always ask me if it's true that we eat everything with our hands. To which I always counter, do you use cutlery when you have to eat a taco or a pizza? Story 39. Am I supposed to care? Eat it with your hands or don't. Fold, don't fold. Cheese, no sauce, pineapples, I could not bring myself to care. You know what I care about? The guy making my pizza should be able to make a good pizza. Beyond that, not my problem. Eating a Snickers bar with a fork and knife on the other hand. Story 40. It's how I eat it, and I converted my best friend to eat it that way too. It's just so much cleaner and more efficient. I have a big beard and it's messy otherwise. Story 41. Imagine caring about people eating with utensils. Whereas in my country we eat rice meals with hands, but sometimes it's understood if you want to use utensils. Story 42. There are parts of the world where it is normal, and eating it with your hands would be considered terribly rude. What is normal to you is not necessarily the universal standard. Story 43. Who gives a damn? Probably the same people that don't want others to be gay or another color. Leave people alone and worry about yourself. Story 44. If the pizza slice is small and sturdy, I eat with hands, but if it is at all too sloppy or gigantic, I'm using a fork and knife. Chicago and Detroit style require the use of a fork and knife. New York style is also good for handling because of the crust being sturdy and not flimsy. Stuff like Papa John's and Little Caesars I don't order anyway because it's garbage. Story 45. I'm fine with it. Sometimes if it's super hot and I don't want to burn the roof of my mouth, I'll start in with a fork and knife. Other times, the crust might not support the toppings. Story 46. I usually eat pizza with a fork and knife. I don't know, it feels more formal. I usually eat with my own hands when it's leftovers or when I'm hungry and want to eat fast. Story 47. You mean you do not? I bet you eat your Snickers bar with just your hands too. Do not you, you animal? Seriously, though, I eat pizza with my hands only if it is the right texture to lift up, or lift and fold in half. Once you reheat pizza in the oven, though, it is easier to use a knife and fork or at least a fork because it loses some of the crispiness. That is just a fact. Story 48. Once it hits my plate, it's mine to do with as I please. Also, if it's a piece of deep dish with everything, I'm not picking that mess up with my hands. Story 49. Like they probably also had braces at some point in their life and got used to eating it that way. Guaranteed to get cheese in the brackets if you bite into a slice. Story 50. They can do what they want, it won't bother me in the slightest. But most likely it's a sign that they are too stuffy to be fun, unless they are eating the Detroit red top pizza that's drowned in sauce, or a similar unwieldy pie style. Story 51. Should bother anyone as it is mostly a cultural thing. Lots of people in Italy, when sitting down to eat, will use a fork and knife. Similar to seeing people use a fork while eating sushi in America. I know it's wrong, but don't mind at all. Story 52. I do this when I want to eat pizza while playing video games. I don't want to get my hands dirty, so I just cut the pizza into small bite-sized pieces. Story 53. It makes no impact on me whatsoever. My dad ate pizza with a fork and knife and also got upset if it wasn't cut into pie slices versus square. Pizza still tasted the same. Story 54. They look cultured and civilized. Also smart and cool. I eat pizza with cutlery. Honestly, the only people I can't accept are those who eat pizza with scissors. They are insane. Hands are fine as utensils. Story 55. I am one of them. I think it is a bit more civilized and makes more sense. Why would you want your meal spoiled by greasy fingers? It is also how pizza is eaten in Italy. Story 56. Some pizza requires it. What even is this question? Now, if you asked, how do you feel about people who eat a hamburger with a fork and knife? Then I have some comments. Story 57. As someone whose front teeth are just for show, a cap or bridge that's already fallen out once and is held in place by a lot of cement, I wonder if they also have tooth issues, if they don't want to get their hands messy, or if they think it's expected. I don't spend much time on those thoughts, though, because I'm usually focused on the pizza I'm cutting up myself. Oh, the question was about feelings. I feel like folks who eat pizza with a fork and knife probably have a good heart. They have some things they could work on, but we're all on a journey. I feel like they're looking forward to the day when they can pick up a slice and take a giant bite of that delicious combination of cheese, sauce, crust, and toppings.